Hello there. Happy Tuesday. We're here on a new day and time right now. So mark your calendars. Tuesdays at 11 are our new live video times. Today we're talking about boundaries, and we're looking at them from a few different angles. Boundaries with others, which we hear about all the time, and is probably what comes to mind when you think about the word boundaries. But we're also going to be talking about boundaries that we set with ourselves and boundaries with technology. Because as moms, business owners, and full-blown actual human beings, there is a lot coming at us all the time from a lot of different places, right? And boundaries allow us to protect our energy, be intentional with the way we're spending our energy, create space in our calendars, and protect our peace of mind. This is a lot to do with our mental load and our energy level, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. I'm going to walk you through the different areas where we need to set and hold boundaries around our time and energy, and also share some tools and strategies and different examples so that you can get started, so that you might be able to make a couple of simple shifts to lighten that mental load, make things feel a little bit easier on yourself. If you are new to me, I'm Jenna. My company is J-Lane Virtual Solutions, and I help you spend less time on the must-dos and create more time for joy through simple systems and rhythms, both for your home and for your business. Because as moms building businesses, we know that home and business are not two separate things. They're very much intertwined, and when we create structures around them, they're able to support each other better and support us better. So let's dive in. If you're watching, be sure to say hello in the comments. I love to know that you're here and chat back and forth. A boundary, just laid out simply, is a limit. It's a limit of an amount of activity, or physically it can be an actual line, a dividing line. And I find that visual representation, that sort of physical idea of a boundary, can be really helpful, even when I'm thinking about more abstract things like my time or my energy, right? Because there are three ways we can think about boundaries. We can think about boundaries around our physical space, that real, tangible, visible type of a boundary. We can think about boundaries around our time and boundaries around our energy. So when we think about physical boundaries in the context of what we're talking about here, and we're thinking about our physical space, right? Imagine that maybe your kids' stuff or household mess is encroaching on your workspace. You know, I have a desk set up in our back family room. I like to sit here because we have windows all around the room. I can look out at the woods. It's gorgeous. But it is a shared space. We don't have a dedicated office in our home. So there is often kids' stuff around, but we have a very clear rule that kids' stuff, toys, craft supplies, they don't go on mom's desk. Okay, so even though there is other stuff in the room, my desk is like this protective bubble that is a business-only, work-only zone, right? Or maybe you have the opposite situation, which is my former situation, where you work at the kitchen table and maybe you happen to leave your laptop on the kitchen table a lot of the time, and every time you look at it, it's a reminder of all the work that needs to get done, even when you're not in your work time. So being intentional with our physical space is one first step, and can often be a pretty simple step to drawing that line between this is work time, this is my workspace, versus this is family or personal time, this is our family space, right? So that is just one example of boundaries around our physical space, right? I'm sure that you can think of others. I would love to hear, have you experienced work encroaching on your family space? Have you experienced family household mess encroaching on your workspace, and what did that look like for you? Because our physical space can be distracting, or it can support our focus, right? Now, time and energy are pretty closely linked They're both a little bit more abstract. They're both things that we want to be more intentional with. And we can approach that in a couple of different ways. So time is a little bit more concrete for us, right? We know we have a limited amount of time in a day, a limited amount of time in a week, right? This is kind of an easier concept to grasp and to wrap our heads around because we can count it. We can count the number of hours. We can count the number of minutes. If we look at a calendar or a timeline, we can even see a visual representation of it. So it can sometimes be a little bit easier for us to set those boundaries, to block things off on our calendar or whatever the case may be, to say that from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock is work time or whatever your schedule is, right? We can have a little bit more concrete representation and boundaries around that. Energy becomes a little bit trickier, right? This isn't something we can see. It's not really even something we can measure in a super concrete way. It's something that we have to notice and feel and monitor. So if we want to be intentional with our energy, we have to pay attention to our energy and understand how we're feeling in different situations. And for some of us, that is a real challenge. If it's something that you haven't really done before, it can feel really challenging. Even if it's something that you have practiced, there are times when it can be hard to tap into what's going on with you because there's so much going on out here. Okay, so that's one of the goals we'll get into a little bit with strategies, is keeping an eye, so to speak, on your energy level. So one of my clients is an amazing parenting coach, and she also coaches me. And she often talks about energy drain on mom, right? Like maybe your kid does a behavior that doesn't cause like a physical or visible impact. Maybe it doesn't break anything. Maybe no one was physically hurt, but you are just drained from the experience of it all, right? And so that's kind of what we're talking about here. You know, like maybe everything fits neatly into your calendar or into your schedule or into your physical space, but there's something about it that is draining your energy and just leaving you feel depleted and less than how you want to be feeling. Because when that happens, when we're feeling that way, we aren't showing up the way we want to be, and we're certainly probably not enjoying our life and our work and the things that we're spending our time on, right? So those are kind of the three buckets, I guess, that I'd like you to keep in mind as we continue throughout the rest of this video. Is we're talking boundaries around physical space, time, and energy. And for our purposes today, I think we're going to lean pretty heavily toward the time and energy side. But sometimes small changes to our physical space can make a big difference to support our energy as well. So in addition to those three sort of types of boundaries, we're going to talk about three different contexts of boundaries. Boundaries with other people, boundaries with yourself, and boundaries with technology. Now, the boundaries with other people, I feel like if you hear the word boundaries, that's what you think of. That's what people are always talking about. They're telling you to say no to things you don't want to do, you know, to stop just saying yes to everything and the people pleasing and all of that. And that is all completely true, completely valid. But I'm probably not going to spend a ton of time on that just because I feel like we've all heard it. We all know. It's nice to have a reminder though, right? And so one of the huge goals behind the work I do related to systems is not just so that people have systems in place. It's so that they are spending their time and energy in a more intentional way, spending the time and energy on things that they actually want to be doing, that bring them joy, that make them feel fulfilled and satisfied, right? And so that's the foundation of boundaries, right? If people are making requests of you, if people are inviting you to things, some of those requests and some of those invitations, most of them probably, are very nice. And the person who's inviting you is coming from a really good place, And it might be something that at another time in your life you'd be super into, or, like, it's not like there, people are just coming at you asking you to do terrible things all the time, right? But the hard part for us is sometimes saying no to things that, like, part of us wants to say yes to, but maybe we also know that it's not aligned with where we are in life right now, right? It's that kind of FOMO. Like, I know I don't have time for it now, but I don't want to miss it, stuff like that. So, when we're talking about boundaries with other people, one of the most powerful tools, I believe, is to come back to your intentions for this season of life and your goals and your vision for this season of life. A few weeks back, I did a live about that, kind of how to be intentional with your time, and we talked about the buckets of your life right now. Your family bucket, your business bucket, your personal bucket. If you didn't catch that live, go back and see it. Let me see if I can just remember what the date was on that. I think it was January 19th. So anyway, hop back and take a look if you missed it. But the idea is that in different phases, in different stages of life, different things are going to take priority. And that's okay. That's how it has to be if we want to actually make progress in any area, if we actually want to feel that deep fulfillment in any one area. And so that's a really good filter to run any kind of requests or invitations through, right? For your personal social calendar, for your business, maybe someone reaches out to work with you, but that's just, that type of work isn't what you're focused on now, or you want to say yes, but you're fully booked and you're trying to work on this over here, and hold your boundary around your time, right? So look at your goals, look at the priorities that you've set for yourself at this time, and decide if those things fit into the mold. Now, the other thing is that before you can set a boundary with someone else, you need to hold it with yourself. And this is a little different than what I'm going to move on to, but you can't communicate a boundary clearly to someone else if you don't know what it is and if you're not committed to it, right? And this can be really hard. So, for example, I had a conversation with someone this morning about coaching with me, and my focus in my business is shifting, right? For a long time, I've been a virtual assistant. I've been the doer. I've been the one who does the things and makes it happen. And as I move in this coaching direction, I am no longer the doer. I'm the guide. I'm the thought partner. I am the one who helps you make the plan and provides resources so that you can do for yourself. And so as I move into that space, I have to keep reminding myself, and I actually said it out loud to her this morning, like, I need to check myself, because I am so quick to jump and be like, oh, I can do that for you. I can take care of that for you. And I could, and I probably enjoy it. But that's not my goal and my priority at this stage of my business, right? So I have to get clear on that with myself. I have to get clear about what does fit into this new role and what does not, so that I can clearly communicate it to someone else. And so that is a huge piece of setting and holding boundaries with other people. The next context of boundaries that we're going to talk about today is setting boundaries with yourself. And this is largely mental, right? This is where we're trying to get to a place where during work, we're focused on work, and during personal and family time, we're shutting the work brain off so that we can be in family or personal or social time, right? And this is so hard for us because it's all intertwined, because we care so much about all of it. And I just want to offer that when you're distracted, when you're thinking about Project A while you're over here trying to work on Project B, you're not giving your best to whatever it is that you're trying to do in this moment. And that's kind of a hard thing to think about, and I don't say that to make anyone feel guilty or bad or wrong, because I still do this all the time. You know, it's a constant practice. It is a process. There's not a time when we're just going to have like a physical switch that we can be like work brain off, work brain on, mom brain on. You know, it's just not, that's not how it works. But it is a practice. This is where a lot of mindfulness comes in. I'm going to talk about some of those tools. This is also one of the areas where I think systems play the biggest role, because when you have processes in place to keep the basic operations of your home running smoothly, you're less likely to be stressing about the dirty laundry and the dishes and what's for dinner tonight when you're trying to work. Same thing. When you have systems and processes in your business, you have a place where you're holding all of the important tasks and deadlines and information. When those thoughts pop up during your personal time, you can remind yourself, okay, yep, I already have that. That's taken care of. I know where it is. It will be there tomorrow. Or if it's not, you have a place where you can super quick jot down a note, enter a note into a Trello board or a Google Doc or whatever you use, and say, okay, it's handled. I'm back here now. Right? So this, for me, is one of the huge areas, because the mental load of being a mom is huge. The mental load of growing a business is huge, and we're trying to do them both. Plus, these other things that are just for us, right? Other relationships, other hobbies, other interests. So when we can find tools that help us to kind of segment that information and keep it safe, and we can trust that what's important is going to be done, then it is so much easier to set those thoughts aside. And this stage of boundaries with yourself just comes back again and again to being intentional with your thoughts and intentional with your actions. All right. The final context that I wanted to talk about is boundaries with technology. And again, both in our society in general and as someone with a business that lives online, this is something that has the potential to completely take over, right? And most of us have some kind of goals or some kind of ideas around the role that we want technology and screens to play in our lives, right? And so this is another one of those areas where we want to just be aware of whether what we say we want and our goal is lining up with what we're actually doing, right? Because there's nothing wrong inherently with technology. Okay, as someone with an online business, you need technology. You rely on technology to run your business, to connect with potential clients, to network, to market yourself, to provide your services. Okay, there are amazing tools that allow us to do this work from the comfort of our own homes and still be able to contribute to our families and impact our clients and do all these amazing things. But there's also a time when we need to shut it down, right? So this is where I'm going to start to dive into some tools and strategies, and I'm going to start with technology because it's kind of the most concrete and I don't know, kind of the easiest to address. That does not mean it's the easiest to do. This has a lot to do with our habits, and I've been reading habits lately. I've probably mentioned that I'm like fascinated with habits and how they form and how people maintain them right now. More on that, I'm sure, later. But for technology, kind of ironically, sometimes there are tech tools that can help us monitor and hold our boundaries around our technology use. So one thing that I always start off by telling people when I'm talking about focus or anything like that is to close your email, turn off notifications. Like, we just don't need all the blings, the beeps. Even if you don't go over and like look at the message right now, it's in your head. It's like, oh, there's something waiting for me over there. You know, that beep takes you away from what you're focusing on. I'm thinking specifically of during work time right now. So there's certainly a spectrum here of how far you can go in either direction of being reachable and getting all the notifications all the time versus none at all. But some simple things that I think are really helpful are, number one, closing your email, having set times of the day where you're going to go in and check your email and respond. The phone is a big one. So on my phone, the only notifications that I really have are phone calls and text messages. And honestly, I would love to just put my phone on do not disturb or airplane mode for large chunks of the day, but I leave those on because I have kids that are at school. If someone needs to reach me, I want to be reachable because we don't have a landline. So I have my phone and my text messages, and I allow my messenger things to pop up silently, so that when I open my phone, I'll see if I have a message there. And I do that probably largely because I just don't get a ton of messages there. And when I do, it's from somebody who needs a response from me. So you can decide what kind of notifications are important for you to see and which ones can wait. So let's say you are on Instagram. Most of us are on Instagram. And you don't want your notifications popping up for DMs or anything. That's okay. You can still respond to people in a timely manner, but it's going to become a part of your daily rhythm at certain times of the day, maybe when you're checking your email, to go in and check and respond to messages, right? Because when we're jumping back and forth from tasks, responding to this, responding to this, responding to this, number one, we're not as focused. It's going to take us longer to complete the tasks that we're working on. Your brain has to shift gears every time. So things end up taking longer, and you get more of that energy drain because you're constantly shifting gears instead of allowing yourself to focus in on one thing, then move on to the next, right? Single tasking versus multitasking. And along with technology, there are lots of tools and apps out there that allow you to track your device use. So if you have a particular goal in mind of how much time you want to be on your phone, maybe you really love scrolling social media, that's something that you enjoy, and you also want to limit it to a certain amount of time every day. There are apps that can help you do that. And then using a time tracker for work. You've heard me talk about this many times. I also did a live a couple weeks back on how to do a time audit. But if you say this time is work time, using that time tracker is also kind of a reminder. You know, if you say you're going to sit down and work for 2 hours and you see your tracker approaching that 2-hour mark, it kind of triggers you to say, okay, I've got to wrap up the task that I'm on, because in 15 minutes I am with my kids, right? So we can use these different tools, even though they are technology themselves, to support healthy boundaries around technology use. All right. When it comes to boundaries with other people, I really like using a calendar for that. Even if the other person doesn't have access to your calendar or they're not scheduling through a scheduling app, you have the boundary there and you can see clearly whether their request is a yes or it's a no. Okay, so if it's for a specific day and time, that makes it really clear. And you can also block your time as busy on your calendar. There are things on my calendar where I'm still free. There are things on my calendar where I'm busy, where it is a hard blocked out, I am not available during this time. And one of the reasons that I love using a scheduling tool like Calendly is because I can set my availability in there for when I'm available for calls or meetings. But then also Calendly will link to my calendar. So let's say normally on Thursdays, I'm available from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. People can book meetings with me anytime in that schedule. But this week I have an appointment at 2 o'clock. Well, Calendly is not going to allow anyone to schedule a meeting with me at 2 o'clock. Okay? So we can kind of use those to automatically filter out some things in our schedule. And then if things come up that are a little bit more, not necessarily at a particular day or time, you still can see your calendar and see like, oh, this week is really busy. Or you can look at your weekly plan in Trello. Okay, I'm really busy this week, but later next week, things are really going to slow down. It gives you that space to say yes, no for now, or no period, right? Like I connected with a woman in a Facebook group last week. We had a lot of things in common, really excited to meet her and talk to her. And when I sent her my Calendly link to schedule a coffee chat, I let her know, hey, this week I have a lot more meetings than usual. Would it be possible for us to look at the following week? And she said, yeah, of course. And she booked a call that following week, right? So that wasn't a no. It was a, I'm really busy right now, but I still really want to talk to you. So let's just delay it a little bit so that it works with everything else that's going on. Now, boundaries with yourself is where I feel like I'm really going to go off here. And it really comes back to a lot of mindfulness. You know, it has to do with our habits, and sometimes very small shifts in a habit can make a really big impact. But it is also so much about mindfulness, because the boundaries with ourself are so much more about our energy. They're not as concrete, they're not as tangible. It's really about what's going on in our mind versus what's actually going on in front of us, right? Like playing with your kids while you're thinking about this client call you have later, right? Or trying to focus on writing a social media post or a blog post when you're thinking about the fact that you need to schedule a doctor's appointment for your kids, right? It's that type of mental back and forth that often leaves us feeling so exhausted. And so I know mindfulness is like a big buzzword. Mindfulness, self-care, boundaries, we're like in them all today. But it is also just such a powerful tool. So there are a few that I'm going to recommend that I have tried, that I have really enjoyed and have worked well for me. I would love to hear in the comments if there are tools that you've used that help you, and they can be so simple, right? It's just a matter of us practicing them enough that they become automatic. So the first is some kind of meditation practice. And to be honest, this is one that I have struggled with a little bit. I meditate fairly regularly, and I do really enjoy it, and I do feel a difference when I do it. The time that I'm the most consistent is listening to a meditation before I go to sleep at night. It helps calm me. It helps quiet my noisy mind before I drift off to sleep. And honestly, the meditations I listen to, I use the Calm app, are like 10 or 12 minutes long. And there are a lot of nights when I'm asleep before the meditation's even over. And they usually start off with like, sit in an alert position. That's not what I'm here for. And then I've been trying to incorporate a morning meditation, just a short 5 or 10 minute sit, because it does help me feel calmer. But it's also an exercise for your brain, because you're going to think things all the time. And it's learning to quiet down the thoughts and focus on what you're meant to be focusing on. During a meditation, that might be your breath. It might be a mantra. It might be a visualization, whatever you've chosen, or whatever, you know, if you're listening to a guided meditation, I love those. I find them so much easier to stick with. It's just that practice, that exercise of saying, oh, thank you. I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm coming back over here. Because that's really what we're trying to do when we're talking about boundaries with ourselves. So another thing that is so simple but so effective, for me at least, is to narrate to yourself what you're actually doing right now. You don't have to say it out loud. You can say it in your head. But, you know, like, I find myself sometimes, my kids come home from school, they're having a snack, they're talking about their day or Minecraft or whatever, and I find myself kind of drifting away, thinking about some chore I have to do later or something that I need to do for work in the morning, and I can just kind of say to myself, I'm with my kids right now. I'm having a snack with my kids, or I am listening to my kids about how their day went, and that brings me back to the present moment. You can do the same thing in your business, right? Like maybe you're thinking about a request that came in and you can say to yourself, nope, I am working on this podcast episode now. And just kind of bring yourself back, because the hardest part, I think, is like catching yourself. And then another exercise, which I learned from my therapist and found super helpful, is visualizing like a jar or a shelf. I like a shelf where if a thought pops up that you're not wanting to focus on right now, that you can visualize grabbing it, putting it up on the shelf. It's still there. It will be there later when you're ready for it, but you don't need to do anything with it right now. So those are just a few. There are a ton. I love learning different mindfulness exercises and stuff. So if you have a favorite, be sure to share it with us. But those are three of my favorites. Just a real simple meditation practice, 5 or 10 minutes a day, even narrating to yourself what it is you are actually wanting to focus on right now to bring yourself back to the present moment, and then using that visualization of putting that thought or idea up on a shelf. So that was a lot. We talked about physical boundaries, time boundaries, energy boundaries. We talked about holding those limits with other people, with ourselves, with technology, as well as some tools and strategies to help you do all of those things. And as I mentioned, especially when we're dealing with our thoughts, our boundaries with ourselves, systems are such a powerful, powerful tool here. Systems are that thing that creates, what I like to say is that structure creates freedom. When you have those structures in place, you know that the important stuff is taken care of. You're free to be in the present moment. You're free to set that aside and not think about it, not worry about it, because you know you're good. You've got it, right? And I also know that it's not always the easiest thing to set those up on your own, or even to notice which areas you need the most help. So that is why I offer free 45-minute sessions with the primary goal of pinpointing where those areas are where you're feeling the most pull, the most tug back and forth, the things that are taking you out of the present moment. And then we can start to brainstorm solutions for how to create some structure around that so that you can let it go, right? We're not letting it go forever, but we're letting it go until you're ready for it and you're going to intentionally focus on that thing. So as a coach, I work with you one-on-one to create the structures and systems and rhythms that save you time and energy and help you to hold those boundaries. And it's all customized to your life in this current season and the way that you naturally like to function, the way you operate. We're not going to try to fit you into a different box. We're going to find the strategies that work best for how you already like to do things. The first step is scheduling one of those free 45-minute sessions with me. We're going to figure out where your biggest challenges are and the first steps to your more streamlined life. You can find a link to book a call in the comments, and I would love to talk with you. I just get a little nuts about this stuff. I want to think about it all the time. This is one of my boundaries for myself lately, is to stop thinking about all of these ideas I have for people all the time. So I would love to talk with you. Again, we'll be back next week, Tuesdays, 11 o'clock, live right here. And I can't wait to see you again then. Have a great day.